Hi, it's Tom from GreenShortzDIY, and today I'm going to show you how to make a simple backyard composter using 2 5-gallon buckets and 3 lids for under $15. Stay tuned. So here's my prototype, and you can tell it's been well used. I made this about a year ago, and I wanted to see if the design worked. And I'm pretty happy with how it turns my kitchen scraps and food waste into really nice organic compost for the garden or the yard. Here's a quick walkthrough on what we're gonna do. We'll have one lid that we use for access, the other lid's gonna stay sealed. The reason we have this lid here in the middle is to support the weight, to provide a third wheel, if you will, for the buckets. Because they're tapered, I didn't want the whole length of this supported only by the end wheels. So we put a wheel in the middle here, and that takes the stress off the bolts that are holding these 2 buckets together. I've painted the outside of the buckets black with a plastic bonding paint because that helps bring heat in to aid in the composting process. Now what you can't see here is that I've cut out the bottom of this bucket, cut through the lid, and in through the bottom of the other bucket, so the compost can move back and forth between both buckets. And it does that by way of a screw drive here, if you will, a screw drive. I've got a corkscrew pattern of bolts that go through the side of the bucket that make a mechanism that will move the compost in this direction if it's rolling one way, or in this direction if it's rolling the other way. Once we put the compost in, we lay it on its side, and then we roll it. Alright, so those are the basics. Let's get started. Materials for the project: 3 5-gallon bucket lids and 2 buckets. Hardware: using number 10 machine screws and nuts. You want 8 of the 1-inch and 12 of the 2-inch. And finally, a can of black spray paint, ideally with plastic bonding skills. Tools for the project: a drill with a 1/4-inch bit, an impact wrench and or a screwdriver, both Phillips head, channel locks, handsaw, scissors, sandpaper, safety glasses, and a Sharpie. First, we'll remove the handles from the buckets. You may have to cut them out. Next, mark out a star-shaped opening to cut between the 2 buckets. Ideally, you're creating 8 tabs, 1 for each bolt. Next, use your drill to create a series of holes to create an opening for the saw. Drill the holes, and then drag the drill bit to connect them. Because I know this polymer is HDPE, number 2, I can recycle these scraps and try and get as much of this waste as I can, within reason, of course, and recycle them with my grocery bags. Once I got an opening, I work the saw. Now I'm going to repeat this with the other bucket. I'm going to set this bucket on top of the other one so I can get this pattern exactly on the other bucket. Now that I've cut both the bases of the buckets, I'm going to transfer this shape onto the lid. That's going to be the center wheel. And I got to make sure that it's centered. To cut this, I'm going to put the lid on a bucket for stability. The lid is actually considerably softer than the rest of the bucket, so you can actually cut it with scissors. Just watch your hands on those burrs, they're pretty sharp. Just make sure these aren't your nice scissors. The reason we're cutting these jagged sections on this is we're going to use these as tabs to connect the two buckets and the lid together. The teeth are actually going to help chew up the compost, so a little extra agitation there to keep the process going. That's why we match them up, but it isn't essential that they be a perfect match. A little hard to get into the corners. Kind of work the jaws of the scissors open as much as possible. Kind of push it back in there. The lid is cut. This is the real meat of this project. Cutting the two buckets and the lid. Probably half the work right there. Alright, now it's time to connect them. Let me just say, I really think it's a great thing when a manufacturer marks their polymers with the recycling number. These small pieces like this, to make it through the recycling process, need a carrier. And that's why they're going in with my grocery bags, which is the same polymer. Now we'll line up our two buckets and lid and drill the first two holes to connect them. This is where it's essential to make sure that the middle wheel is centered. Now while I've got two in, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and hand tighten the nuts on. Now I'm going to drill the rest of the holes. Put pressure on the nut on the other side. You should be able to just hand tighten these. The nut's gonna bite. You can get it nice and snug. I'll tighten the two that are the screw heads facing this way, and then I'll flip it over. The nut insists on spinning. To get some pliers or your wrench and hold the other side. Hello. Also use a nut driver here. Okay, this is faster. Nice and snug. So I have 9 holes and 8 nuts. I'm not really concerned about leaving that extra one empty. If you happen to have an extra nut and bolt around, go ahead and put it in there. I've actually got a couple of self-tapping screws, and I'm going to use those in lieu of the nut. Now that I've got the center wheel in place, I'm going to mark a line here for our corkscrew mechanism. That's going to act like an internal rake to move the compost one direction when we spin it one way, the other direction when we spin it the other way. I've got 12 screws, so that's going to mean 6 per side. So I'm going to mark off. I might move these a little bit as I drill them. Now we've marked the line, we're going to drill the holes. Now we'll install the bolts, and to do that I'm going to just thread them through Then I'm going to grab the nut with my channel locks here, get a good grip on it, then use my impact wrench to cinch it up. Actually, should start in the middle, work my way out. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's see if I can just hold this one in my hand. Be careful not to let your finger get pinched between the nut and the bucket. I'm going a little slower while I've got my hand in there so that it doesn't get pinched. The woodpecker's mimicking that sound. That's funny. Hear it? There he is. Love that. And the last one. Let's give this guy a roll test. Alright, now let's put the lids on. These bucket lids come with these locking tabs. Here you can see the pull strip to release it. So as long as the locking strip is still on, this lid should stay on without being secured with a screw. However, if you notice that it releases, then you may want to add a couple screws just to hold it in place. Before I put the other lid on, I'm going to remove this locking tab. You just break that seal there. And just pull the ring right off. That's going to free up these gaps. And that's going to allow the lid to be flexed to be opened. And this lid's going to go on. Now you can see how this opens pretty easily. Comes off. I'm going to leave myself a little note to remind me which end to open, and then I'm going to drill 6 drain holes. The drain holes will allow rainwater to drain into the composter when it's standing upright. Alright, now that the lids are installed, the last thing we got to do is paint the bucket, and to prep it for that I'm going to use a damp paper towel and some sandpaper. First I'll give it a little scuff just to help the paint stick. Then I'll wipe it down real quick with the damp paper towel to get any sort of dust off. Let it dry for a few minutes, and then we'll paint. Don't worry about sanding this part here or the wheels because they're not going to get painted. That paint would just come off on the ground. So we really just want to focus on the wider surfaces of the buckets. Actually, I didn't do this step on my prototype. You can see that the paint was coming off that. So this step hopefully will reduce the amount of paint that comes off. Well, there you have it, folks. The 2-bucket roller. A simple DIY backyard composter ready to start turning your kitchen scraps into valuable garden soil and reducing what you put in the trash by up to 80%. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe for more GreenShortzDIY. And of course, there's an airplane. I'll work with that. Join the community by subscribing to our YouTube channel and help spread the green by liking our videos and sharing with your friends. GreenShortzDIY.com. That's shorts with a Z.